Well, the practice was set up in 2000 by David, primarily as a consultancy at the beginning, and really the practice started to grow in 2006, and we started off, there were 4 people then, and we're now a team of 24.
My personal background was the design and delivery of buildings with complex geometry, and that's really what brought us to BIM in the first place. It was 3-dimensional modelling that then morphed into building information modelling, and then that realisation that actually we're talking about data sets and not just the model, which was a little bit disappointing, but we've coped with it.
We got into BIM quite, from a completely different route, not because of BIM or working collaboration, etc. We got into it because we were trying to streamline the process that we're working in. And what we found is that as we were early adopters, we were able to influence quite a lot of the decision making, both from within the industry outwards. And obviously we found efficiencies also going through. So efficiency in terms of the production of the information, the accuracy of the information. So with smaller teams, we're able to actually produce much better quality information, much more structured information as well. And I think that's been completely fundamental to us growing over the last 7 years. From that 4-person to now we've got like 24 or so.
I think the people and culture is far more important than technology. Although obviously we wouldn't be doing what we're doing without the technology. I think the philosophy and mindset of the people enable the technology to work.
Changing the culture is the biggest thing, I think, both in the office but also I think in the industry. You can find different people of different age groups or different backgrounds, and they've embraced it in different ways. Some are resistant to it, even though they may be young or kind of considered to be culturally sort of aware. Or they could be, for example, much more mature, but then actually they're so into the kind of new technology and the people driving it. So in the office, we have got quite a young team, sort of late 20s, early 30s is sort of the average age. So with that comes the ability for, I think also from the universities and the education, to try new ways of solving problems. And I think inherently there's this Generation Y element of it, which is about collaboration. People are not afraid to talk to each other and break down these sort of silos, which would have been there in the before.
I think in terms of the technology, we all use iPhones these days, and we have taken on the technology really, really quickly, and we use it as a tool to our lives. And this is how I think our practice has kind of moved from the 2D world to the 3D world, and we're using it as a tool and every day in our lives basically. I think if the people can change their mindset slightly about what the idea is behind the process, they'll realize that it's not actually going to be a hindrance. It's more of, it's a tool to help you create better buildings, and yeah, I think mindset and technology, they work hand in hand.
So because we were small again, we were quite agile in terms of changing the culture in the office. It's not like we had to change 15 documents or go through lots of directors or board meetings. It was very much a case of David and Fiona saying, well look, we're going to adopt this, we're going to embrace it. So that's why from probably I think about 2000 for about the last 4 or 5 years, we just said we're going to use BIM tools on all projects, whether they're refurb, small, large, new build, etc. And essentially as the team's grown, they've just come into that culture. We've not had to change something that's been there for the last 20 odd years, which is, I guess, one of the challenges some of the big practices have, or the companies, which is they've already got something established, but it takes quite a lot for them to move the ship around.
What underlines David Miller Architect's attitude to engaging with other people is creating a very collaborative platform where you don't see yourself as an individual team working by yourself, but rather as a broader design team which relies on everyone else fully participating in the process.
When we first started out, I would say that most of the projects, we were just the only people on the project using BIM, and from that point of view, we identified very early on that it was driving massive efficiencies in the practice and had lots of other positive benefits. So the fact that no one else was using it really wasn't a problem, it was benefiting us. Latterly, we're coming across situations where it's much more normal for everybody on the team to be BIM enabled. We've generally always been able to find structural engineers that have been able to collaborate with. Not so many MEP people, but again that's starting to change. But what we found is that quite often we're perhaps one of the more advanced people in the design team, but we're not averse to sharing our knowledge with people.
We would have team meetings every week and not see ourselves as the architects who are responsible for only our job. We were more than happy to sit down with the services engineers and explain to them how to run a clash detection exercise to ensure that all the ducts were running through the builder's work openings. Although they weren't as developed, or their understanding of BIM wasn't as developed as ours, we didn't really see that as an issue because it was a very collaborative environment, and we knew that we relied on the quality of their information for the overall building to be delivered properly and on time.
For example, we went to site recently with our model, and the guys on site were like, well, you've got to send me that, because they could see the whole building, not just as a 2D drawing, because at the end of the day it's going to be a 3-dimensional object that sits within that space. And they were able to go around the model, and they used Navisworks. We plugged them into Navisworks, and they were like, you've got to send this to us next time earlier than halfway through. We
have some issues with mechanical and electrical engineers. I think they're a little bit further behind the times. I think it's to do with their appointment as well. How they break up the appointment over the project. So potentially they just do a rough schematic and then pass it on to someone who actually installs it on site. It has worked successfully on a number of our projects, but majority-wise we actually have that separate, and sometimes we actually input it into the model as opposed to having another consultant doing it.
Following on from the initial sort of £10,000 a seat investment, we did go through a period where obviously that was a big cost to the practice, but over a couple of years we started to see the return in terms of the efficiencies that the investment was making.
It felt like much more of an investment when we were a small practice of 4 people just starting out. Now that we're much bigger and the costs have stayed fairly constant, it's really a small part of our investment in the practice.
Obviously at the beginning, when there was again 4 or 5 of us, that's quite a large chunk of investment. But as the time goes, you can see that training obviously drops down, for example, because essentially everyone's training internally within our groups. Different people have different expertise within the office, so we can just go to each other. So they're sort of self-learning, and again through different sort of online training systems. But essentially, as time went on, the kind of obviously the cash flow in terms of project size, fees, started to obviously go. It started off being parallel, but then it started to obviously go exponential away from the expenditure kind of thing.
We try and initiate people as soon as they come into the practice, where they have a kind of boot camp to understand the program and know how to use it. So that's maybe a 3 or 4 day time period where they're solidly learning BIM.
In terms of the ROI, there's an improvement in the efficiency in the practice and what we're producing. So we're producing more for the same. We're also being able to offer additional services around our appointment, which is really helpful and has helped distinguish the practice in a difficult trading environment.
I think in terms of the investment is that utilising the product every day doesn't seem like a chore. At the beginning, I have to say, it slightly was, because we're all learning and you're thinking a new thing to add to your long educational, you spend a while becoming an architect and then there's an additional extra. But today, as soon as somebody comes into our office, they're given the training and they work like us, and actually they sometimes are telling us how to do certain elements of things, and you're learning a lot every single day. New things come up and you're able to, it's facilitated by the fact that you know a bit more about the process.
When you make a door schedule 5,000 times in a big project manually by counting, you're going to make mistakes. When the computer's doing it for you, that's where computers really have their power, by doing laborious tasks 1,000 times faster than we do without any mistakes. So I appreciate that, and I think that's what people should put their money into, removing human mistakes. Not humans, they're still important.
think the best thing about working at David Miller Architects is I get other people to make tea. No, let's cut that out. For me personally, it's the people, because like I said, I've been here for like the 7.5 odd years, and without the people and the attitudes, it doesn't matter what sort of systems you've got in place. If they're not willing to take that on board, then it's very hard to kind of promote that culture of the office.
I worked with different practices where people have been quite removed and cold and distant, and I think it's the people, my favourite thing, from everyone within the office to the clients I've met to Baffie, our office dog. Everyone's great, and the fact that everyone is so passionate about what they do, so interested about what they do, it makes you want to learn more, it makes you want to work harder.
We're a young team. We do a lot together. It's more like a family at the end of the day.
Definitely the people. You've got an amazing team here. It's like a big family. You can talk to anyone. It's such an open working environment with everyone else that I work with. But then secondary, the investment in the technology that I've got available to me, it's such an amazing opportunity to kind of be at the forefront of this technology and being able to utilise it every day. It's just amazing.
Everyone's really friendly and happy, and we have a lot of fun, and yeah, we go out drinking.
Brilliant.
We can see the profession polarising a little bit at the moment between delivery and design, and we very much want to be doing the full service enabled by BIM.